Welcome everyone. On days like this, it seems virtually impossible to imagine there could be anything wrong in the world. However, life is complicated at the moment. Welcome to NATD's the latest in Drama in the New Normal, the third in our series of online conferences to support colleagues, drama teachers around the country. And particularly today, we're focusing on protecting drama as a subject specialist. The most recent news coming out of government today will have sent ripples of alarm throughout drama departments all across the country, I am sure. We have together a group of specialists who are well positioned to be able to begin to open up how we can respond to that. So there will be a panel discussion shortly, followed by breakout rooms in which you'll have the opportunity to discuss various issues that are arising for all of us at the moment. And then a plenary will bring all of that together again at the end and give the association the direction in which we need to go next. I'd like to start by introducing Sarah Akinsola, who is an NQT working in London at the moment. Can't see her on my screen at the moment, so perhaps Liam can sort that out. Thank you. Sarah, when asked, placed three crucial questions for us as drama teachers and drama leaders, and would like to open today with those three questions. Sarah.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So the first question that I had was, how do we effectively plan or maintain fluidity in learning if lockdown can happen at the drop of a hat? Something that I'm sure a lot of people are as well, but I'm quite, nervous about, because you almost have to double plan all the time, and it doesn't make it easy to create stability for students, which they do need from what I've sort of learned. The second question I have is, what is the true effect of such a long break for the learning of students? Because some students haven't been in school since March. So now to go back in September, it really is a long time to not have had, the day-to-day of school and just progress in their learning as well. And the final question that I had was, how will we manage the anxiety of students surrounding COVID and how it may affect their ability to learn? Because everyone's pretty, panicked. It's just quite up and down, and we're the caretakers for a lot of these kids. So how can we help them in that way?
Thank you, Sarah. Three really sharp questions, practical and taking us quite deep in a whole series of areas. So if all the participants could just hold those questions in their heads while we're discussing other issues, and we'll return to those when we go to the breakout rooms. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, so I'm going to introduce you to the panel very briefly. We have Matthew Milburn. If you just wave, just so that we thank you, Matthew. Matthew Milburn, head teacher. Kate Page, deputy head at the school in London. Rupert Page, who describes himself humbly as a drama teacher. Liam Harris, head of drama. Laura Acton, also head of drama. Sarah Lyons, who's the lead officer for the NEU on health and safety and the environment. Thank you, Sarah. And Andrew Smith, Director of Co-Curricular at St Mary's School. As Andrew waved as well, yes, okay, thank you. Okay, so that's our panel. I hope I haven't missed anybody out. Now, a number of questions were submitted in advance of this meeting. I'm just going to go through as many of those as we can in the short time that we have available. So to kick off with, first question is, how should I deal with potential complaints from parents and or students this year who feel that they should have been ranked higher than another student? Matthew, do you think you could kick us off from a head teacher's point of view?
Most certainly. I mean, I think the first thing to say is do what I think all of us as humanising teachers would do, and that is demonstrate huge empathy. It's an appalling situation for students to be in, and I think it's important. The first thing we do is sit and we listen to where young people are coming from, and I think that resonates with many of Sarah's questions as well and the points that she's raised. I mean, I would want to say, or find a way of getting round to saying that exams are not the be all and end all. And despite the fact that, unfortunately, the schooling system has rather been built around GCSE and A-level exams as an obsession with them, to give a perspective that actually life will move on after this moment, and that everyone is aware of how very difficult the circumstances have been this year. It's an opportunity, I think, for us to say to the student, you need to recognise what's happened, but you also need to move on, recognising that this won't define you. And that's complex because for many years, children have been told this is what defines you. So what you really want to be trying to do, I would argue, is arguing that the school or the college will have a process by which, if parents and children are absolutely determined they want to appeal, they can go through a process. They won't be successful, but they can go through a process. To me, the energy of NATD, the energy of students, the energy of right-minded people needs to be arguing instead for a more empowering and humanizing mode of assessment, and not arguing that we want to, if you like, give value to the old system that is corrupt and has been proven over the last few months to be utterly absurd. And in the last 24 hours, that's been reiterated, hasn't it? It's just absurd. It's a question of people doing this. And that isn't the way in which we should be, what we should be arguing for is a humanizing, empowering modes of assessment. So for me, we should be talking about assessing drama and the student's ability to work with an art form, not their ability to write about literature, not their ability just to use the written word, but instead their ability to engage with the art form, their ability to use the art form, their ability to be able to work with others to create meaning. And I think this is actually a huge opportunity for NATD to say, we have always been arguing for a humanizing and an empowering curriculum with an internationalist perspective. Here is our opportunity to say there is an alternative.
Thank you, Matthew. Can I just clarify on a practical sense? I'll come to you in a second, Kate. You said that the individuals will appeal, or my understanding was that the schools do the appeals. So can you clarify the process there?
So the school has to make the appeal.
Right.
Families can appeal to the school.
Right.
And then the school has to say, oh, we got the rank order wrong, or there was an error in process somewhere along the way. Now, from my own perspective, I mean, I think the whole process has been a bit of a nonsense because you're basically making grades up. But what I would argue is to try and encourage the student to see beyond being defined by a letter or a number. And that's, for me, the central message. But you're quite right. It's the school that has to lead the process of, that has to lead any appeal process. But obviously parents and children and students have to notify if they wish to appeal.
Right. Kate, from the deputy head's point of view.
Hi, I was just, I'm focusing a bit on this idea of rank order because, Matthew, please correct me if you think my interpretation is off kilter, but I don't think most of our students will be interested in rank order or be asking questions about that. They might be asking questions about the centre assessed grade. So did the teacher think I should have got a B or an A or a C? And I hope that there isn't a lot of discussion about rank order in the next phase, because I think that there's a lot of really complicated difficulties with that. You know, 6 students that you think are all at the same level and performing at the same level, that rank order was something that all teachers, regardless of subject, really struggled with on a moral grounds, not just on a kind of educational and a technical level. So I think I'm hoping that students won't be asking that question, or be distracted by whether they thought they were better or worse than another student. But what they might be feeling is, did the teacher judge me fairly? And did the teacher think that I was an A, a B, a C, or a D, a 1 to 9, or whatever? And so I think that's, and I'm thinking about the A-level results for tomorrow. That's you know, that's perhaps the more likely challenge that you'll get. And I think your school, each individual school, hopefully will have discussed what they're going to do about sharing centre assessed grades, and they'll have some guidance on that. There'll be other teachers within the schools, maybe they're middle leaders or senior leaders, who will give you guidance on how to answer that question. I would strongly advise, don't enter into a discussion on a one-to-one basis that isn't going through an experienced senior leader who's guiding you on how to respond to difficult questions. Nobody should be tackling this on their own. Nobody should be writing emails or getting into email communications on a one-to-one basis. Everything should go through the school's procedures, and they're not there for red tape. They're there to support staff who might be feeling vulnerable, and to make sure that the big picture is always at the heart of it.
Right. Thank you, Kate. Okay. So Matthew's message is empathise. Kate's message is very clearly on the day, tomorrow or next Thursday, pass the questions on to those who are on a higher pay grade. Yeah. My guess is also that I'm not sure how many kids or how many parents will be paying that much attention to the fact that rank order is so crucial, apparently, in the setting up of this. But you never know. You never know what's going on. Okay, thank you, Matthew and Kate. We'll move on to the next question, which is a bit lengthy, but I'll read it slowly. I'm currently being told that I cannot teach practical drama, and that teachers from Key Stage 3 to Key Stage 5 will need to sit behind desks, at least until after Christmas. What suggestions do you have for engaging students in meaningful drama under these constraints? Now I'm going to go to Sarah Lyons to kick us off on this one. Sarah works with the NEU union and is responsible for health and safety, and perhaps can give us a perspective on the guidance that we've been given, which seems to change pretty much every day. Sarah, what can you help us with on this?
Okay, thanks, Guy. I have to confess I haven't got any particular knowledge about teaching drama. My son did GCSE drama, but that's about 10 years ago now. But hopefully I've got some idea about the sorts of challenges that will impact on you from September. And I can talk you briefly through what the government guidance says and how that might apply to your subject. So obviously it's physical, it's group focused, and there are known concerns around things like singing and enunciation, loud voices, large gatherings, that kind of thing. The government guidelines about how schools should operate when they open fully were only issued about a month ago, so a little more than 2 weeks before the end of term, so leaving very little time for planning for SLT. But at the same time, it's such a fast-moving situation that it's impossible to know whether what has been put in place now for all schools is going to be, the right thing in a couple of weeks' time, particularly in areas of the country that are finding themselves back in lockdown. I'm not aware of any specific government guidelines for particular subjects like drama. I mean, the guidance is quite generic, and it's what you would expect if there's, given that there's a determination to try to go back to as near normal as possible, but without devoting any resources to any more imaginative solutions. And it's very much relying on the idea that the virus isn't going to spread widely in schools. And, we don't know if that is the case, and particularly for secondary schools. But what the guidance says is that risk assessments have to be revised before reopening in September, and so that would include setting out how drama teaching would operate. You have to have enhanced cleaning and hand washing and sanitising arrangements in place. So what it says is that when students move between rooms, they should be washing their hands. So you should have sanitising classrooms, you should have tissues, the surfaces need to be regularly cleaned. Obviously teachers don't want to become cleaners, but for their own reassurance, I think you would want to have some kind of spray in your classroom so that you can at least wipe down some of the surfaces between groups. Schools are told that it's important to limit interaction, to set up bubbles that in theory don't mix, but in secondaries, bubbles can be the size of year groups, so presumably up to about 300 pupils. And within those bubbles, it is important to minimise contact, but then it's recognised that that's impossible for young children. For older students, it says they should be encouraged to keep their distance within the group. So that's obviously going to impact on subjects like drama. Staff are told they should keep their distance from pupils and staff, and ideally should stay 2 meters away from other staff. And I think where this question has come from is that what it says about in secondary schools, that staff are advised to stay at the front of the class, ideally 2 meters from the students, with the students side by side and forward facing. So I think that's probably where this question has come from. So just to mention a few other points. Teachers and other staff can cross bubbles. Resources that previously would have been taken out of use can be brought back in. So I presume including any props you might use in drama, they're meant to be cleaned after each group, or if they can't be cleaned after each group, put out of use for 48 hours or 72 hours if they're made of plastic. And it's also suggested that furniture be moved or removed to make space. So trying to sort of interpret that for drama teachers, I mean, ideally you need smaller groups and bigger spaces, but I don't know how possible that is. I don't know to what extent working outdoors is possible, but obviously that's going to be challenging as the weather gets worse. I mean, what does seem to be really important is the issue of ventilation in preventing the spread. I was reading a case study a couple of days ago about a situation in a school in Israel where they had a big outbreak in a school, and it was linked to basically all the windows being closed and the air conditioning being turned on, and then that recycling old air. So that's kind of a brief overview of what the DFE guidance says. But having said all that, I don't think that means that children have to sit at desks until Christmas. I mean, all the minimising contact, the distancing, the hygiene, but I don't think there's anything that says that they have to be sat at their desks. You know, if the desks weren't there, it's the distancing that's important, not so much the sitting at desks. I hope that's of some help.
Sarah, thank you. That's a really useful summary of an enormous amount of information. Liam, do you want to add to that from a head teacher's point of view? So, head teacher now, Liam? Head of drama's point of view, in terms of how we interpret those guidelines.
I think it's there's two things really to consider. You've got the resources that you've got available at your school, and then you've got the additional guidance that then comes from the government have essentially given performing arts specific guidance. It's worth looking at that guidance and seeing how that matches up with what your school can implement. So, for example, in that performing arts guidance, there are strict rules around singing. There are other rules around
We're breaking up a bit, Liam. Could you just repeat what you said? The quality of your sound there's breaking up a bit.
Yep, is that better?
Yeah.
So it's there's some useful kind of nuggets within the government guidance for the performing arts as a sector, which aren't education specific, but that can be applied to our work in terms of things like group sizes. So if you're running a rehearsal, for example, or you're operating some sort of co-curricular or extracurricular production, for example, you're limited to 15 people. That's what the government says. So you shouldn't be rehearsing anything in a group of more than 15. There's also some interesting things there then about use of spaces and rooms and the recommended sizes for rooms and things like that. So it's worth probably matching up and reading that guidance alongside the education guidance to start a conversation with senior leaders within your school.
How do we access that, Liam? Can we make that available on the website?
We can. So we can put it on our website, and it's if you can just Google it on the department on the government website,
right,
as well.
Okay. Quickly, Matthew.
Just very briefly, I think desks potentially get in the way, and in light of what Sarah said about equipment, if children are coughing onto a desk, better not to have a desk. And the other thing I'd say is there have been some great examples in earlier sessions led by NATD about ways in which we can work with socially distanced drama. So some of those are worth accessing.
Kate, thank you.
I sort of saw there's been two points to this question. First of all, we've got a teacher who I'm assuming is a main scale teacher in a school in which they're being asked by their senior leadership team to do something which may not actually be necessary, but they may not be in a position where they feel that they can challenge. So it would be interesting to know, is it possible to have a discussion? Are they being offered space to have a conversation about, I've looked at the guidance, I've looked at what other drama teachers are doing, I've looked at what I think is possible, can we change this up a bit? And then there's another problem, which is if in the first few weeks it's not possible to change it up, and that may be because of other things. So, you know, having spent a lot of time in my school looking at how we organize spaces and bubbles, I can see that we have taken away a music room and a drama room and a PE room in order to make additional classrooms, in order to give Key Stage 3 main spaces that they can be in for a full day with teachers coming to them. Now that's not something that I would have argued for, and the alternatives that I put forward weren't accepted. But what I can see is that a school may be trying to solve one problem by creating another problem, and they are at the moment feeling very tied about what it is possible, how creatively they can problem solve. So is there an opportunity for a discussion, and is it possible for that to be phased? So, you know, after the first 2 to 3 weeks, once the kids are in and we've inhabited the space, you know, with the head teacher or with the deputy head, please could I have a face-to-face conversation with you about how we can perhaps relax some of the guidance that you're giving us about teaching drama, because I can't see how this is going to work practically long term, and you've always got the specifics of an exam specification. So if they have to be doing their devised work now, you can't do it sitting behind desks beyond a couple of weeks of discussion. So you might need to put that argument together to have that complaint. And then the question about how do we engage students practically in drama, well, having somebody who's been forced to teach English many years because they think I can do it because I'm a drama teacher and I can't, I always resort to doing drama in the English classroom. And with my Key Stage 3 classes, we do almost as much practical drama in a classroom as we do written work. So I'm sure that there are teachers within NATD who are doing that regularly and could share some of that experience.
Thanks, Kate. I mean, I think that's something, what you've identified there is that we need to find ways to support one another. And that's something that we can pick up in 2 weeks' time on the 26th of August when we have a follow-up conference. And maybe that is something that's going to be at the heart of that event. Can I move on to the next question, though, which is, what advice do you have for me as a senior leader in supporting my performing arts staff? And Andrew said that he'd like to kick off on this.
Yeah, thanks, Guy. Yeah, I think the first thing to say is that when staff return to schools, there are going to be plenty of things that they're going to be anxious about, worried about, unsure about. And I think the first message from me is that as senior drama teachers or heads of drama, don't worry if you don't know all the answers, and if you can't give them all of the support that they're asking for, there's no shame in that. There is going to be a senior leadership team around you who are there to support you. So don't feel that you need to take on all of the pressure of the questions that staff are giving you. There's a lot to get our heads around at the moment. So that's the first thing. That said, I think it's really useful to be as prepared as possible coming back. I know that Liam's mentioned already the document about guidance for working in performing arts, which I found really useful, the guidance for reopening schools. I don't want to burden people with wading through paperwork, but I have to say there's some really useful nuggets of information there. And if as a senior teacher there, you are aware of the guidance straight from the horse's mouth, I think it will help you to provide sort of better support and guidance for your staff. So if you can, I'd say before coming back to school, do have a browse through those documents. And I think Liam said he'll put them on the website. Also, I think we're all aware that Ofqual have made sort of changes to the way that drama is going to be taught at GCSE and A level over the next year. And obviously it went to consultation, which resulted in precisely nothing from what I could see. But it's useful. Again, I think all examples will be contacting us in the near future with advice and guidance about what those changes involve. So just know your stuff. If you've got information from the government, from Ofqual, from your exam boards, the more that you're clued up, the better prepared you're going to be to provide support for your staff. And then I think it's about planning. If you have a sense of what you want to do in your classrooms for all of your different year groups, a good scheme of work, thinking about what the new guidance is, then I think really if I was to put myself in the shoes of the teacher who's coming back, my question is going to be, how do we get through this GCSE course? How do we get through this A-level course? How are we going to teach practical drama? Just think ahead to the questions that you think are most likely going to be asked. And the best comfort, I think, certainly that if I was in those shoes, the best comfort is having a plan. This is where we're headed. This is our short term. This is our medium term. This is our long term targets. These are the units we're going to be studying. And a final thing, maybe developing a bank, almost going back to the previous question, a bank of games, exercises, techniques, skills that you can do in a variety of socially distanced situations, whether that be behind desks or I have to say I echo what Kate was saying. There's no need really to, as far as I can see, to be behind desks according to the guidance. But things like you can do designing of set, costume, if you're lucky enough to have iPads or computers at your school, doing soundscapes. There are lots of exciting things and areas of drama that you can explore in ways that you can do it just sat down behind a desk if needs be. So be creative, but and really going back to what Matthew said right at the beginning about being empathetic. I think it's a skill that as drama specialists we do have, and listen to your staff, understand them, explain that you might not know all of the answers, but don't be afraid to go and ask people higher up the rank. They're there to help.
Thank you, Andrew. Just checking with Liam, we've run out. Rupert, do you want to can make a very quick comment on this one?
Yeah, very quickly, I would almost divide the question into the kind of technical, pragmatic logistics of how to run things, but also urge teachers to go back to methodology, go back to, what's going to be your focus for the kids, because I think they're going to be extraordinarily anxious anyway coming back into school. The place they will not want to see desks is in their drama classroom. And that's not to give them an opportunity to, run amok, but it's to make sure that it is a creative, safe space. So I would be thinking logistically about all the government desks or not desks, but I think much more importantly, just thinking about the kids and their creative and imaginative responses, not to the curriculum and not to the syllabus, but to the situation they're walking into.
Yeah.